Good afternoon or good evening, football fans. Big Al here on this Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. And welcome to the Week 2 edition of the week that was, as we'll take a look at all the statistical numbers from every game this past week. Sorry, spitting on myself. In the National Football League. And then at the end of the rundown, we'll have our newest Week 3 power rankings. I kind of mulled over these for a bit. I think I have some teams misplaced. But the new power rankings are out. We'll begin to those at the end. Alright, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Let's dive right in to Thursday Night Football, where the Buffalo Bills defeated the Miami Dolphins by a final score of 31-10. This puts the Dolphins at 2-0 and on top of the AFC East, while the Miami Dolphins dropped to 1-1. Start with individual numbers for the Bills. Josh Allen was 13 of 19 for 139 yards and a touchdown and a 107.1 passer rating, plus 2 runs for 2 yards. James Cook was 11 rushes for 78 yards and 2 scores. Rasheed Davis 9 for 29. As for receiving, you've got Khalil Shakir, 5 catches, 54 yards on 5 targets. Dalton Kincaid, 4 for 33 on 4 targets. Ty Johnson, who is technically the kick returner for this team, he had 1 catch for 33 yards on 2 targets, and James Cook with 1 catch for 17 on his only target, and it goes for a touchdown. Tyler Bass was 1 for 2 on field goals. His only make was from 43, and 4 for 4 on extra points. And then Sam Martin, 3 punts, averaging 49.7 per punt. His longest was 65, with 1 touchback and 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. Damar Hamlin led the Buffalo defense with 8 tackles. Spector has 7 tackles. Benford 6 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Williams with 5 tackles. Rasul Douglas 4 tackles. Taylor Rapp with 3 tackles. Lewis had 3 tackles as well, and Ed Oliver 3 tackles and a sack. Gregory Rousseau had 2 tackles, as did Epinesa for the Buffalo Bills. For the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, 17 of 25 for 145 yards with 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions, and a QB rating of 56.7. He did leave this game late in the third quarter after suffering yet another concussion. It is his 3rd in 2 years in the NFL and his 4th over the past 5 years, going back to his playing days at Alabama. Skylar Thompson came in for the rest of the game, and he was 8 of 14 for 80 yards with a 73.5 passer rating. Devin Achane was probably the only bright spot on this Dolphins offense Thursday night. 22 rushes for 96 yards, 7 receptions for 69 yards on 7 targets, and a touchdown. Tagovailoa ran twice for 17. Next up, you've got Jonnu Smith, their new tight end. He had 6 catches for 53 yards on 7 targets. Jalen Waddle, 4 catches, 41 yards on 4 targets, and Tyreek Hill had 3 grabs for 24 yards on 6 targets. Jason Sanders was 1 for 1 on field goals, his only make being from 34 yards, and 1 for 1 on extra points. And then Bailey had just one punt for 48 yards, which landed inside the 20-yard line. On defense, David Long led the way with 9 tackles. Brooks had 4 tackles in a pass defense. Jordan Poyer, 3 tackles. And Kendall Fuller had 2 tackles for the Dolphins. Alright, total yards 351 for Miami and 247 for Buffalo. Passing yards were 212 to 139 for the Dolphins. Rush yards 139 to 108, also in favor of the Dolphins. First downs advantage Miami 20 to 13. On third down, the Bills were 3 for 9 and the Dolphins for 7 for 15. And on fourth down, the Bills 1 for 1. The Dolphins, meanwhile, were just 1 for 5. One penalty for the Bills for 5 yards and 3 punts. They were not sacked. The Dolphins had 7 penalties for 50 yards. They were sacked twice for 13 yards, with 3 interceptions thrown and 1 punt. Closing line was Miami minus 2.5, and the over-under was 49.5. This was probably my best pick of the week, as I took Buffalo both straight up and with the 2.5 points. On to Sunday, where there were 6 upsets on the board in the early portion of the schedule, and we'll start with the Cleveland Browns defeating the Jacksonville Jaguars 18 to 13. So Cleveland gets its first win of the season, while the Jaguars remain winless. Start with individual numbers for the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson was 22 of 34 for 186 yards and a 78.8 passer rating, plus 5 rushes for 20 yards and a rushing touchdown. Jerome Ford had 7 carries for 64 yards to lead the Cleveland ground attack, down to Foreman 14 for 42. Jerry Jeudy, 5 catches, 73 yards on 6 targets, led the Browns in receiving. Then you have Elijah Moore, 6 catches for 44 yards on 8 targets. David Bell, meanwhile, had 3 catches for 27 on 3 targets. And Amari Cooper was held to 3 catches, 11 yards on 8 targets. Hopkins was 3 for 3 on field goals, his longest is 53, and 1 for 1 on extra points. Meanwhile, Bojorquez with 5 punts, averaging 43.6. His long was 64, with 1 touchback and 3 inside the 20-yard line. Owusu Koamora led the Browns defense with 6 tackles. Grant Delpit, 5 tackles. Jordan Hicks and Myles Garrett, each with 3 tackles and a sack. Garrett also added a forced fumble, while Hicks added 2 passes defensed. Newsome, Hickman, and Mitchell also had 3 tackles. Hickman added a pass defense as well for the Browns. And for Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, 14 of 30, 220 yards, no touchdowns or interceptions, QB rating of 71.5, plus 2 runs for 45 yards. Travis Etienne, 13 rushes, 52 yards, and a touchdown. And pretty much non-existent in the receiving game, 3 catches for 6 on 4 targets. And then you have Dearness Jackson with 5 rushes for 26. Brian Thomas Jr. led Jacksonville's receivers with 2 catches for 94 on 4 targets. Then there's Brenton Strange, 3 for 65 on 6 targets. Gabe Davis, 3 for 43 on 7 targets. And that's pretty much it as far as the passing game goes. Alright, Cam Little was 2 for 3 on field goals. His longest was 25, which is basically a chip shot. And 1 for 1 on extra points. And Logan Cook had 3 punts averaging 52. His long was 55 with 1 punt inside the 20. Leading the Jaguars defense is Monteric Brown, 11 tackles. Then you've got Devin Lloyd with 5 tackles, a forced fumble, and 2 passes defensed. Johnson, 4 tackles. Olakun, 3 tackles and a sack. Then there's Andre Sisco with 3 tackles. Josh Hines Allen, 3 tackles, a sack, and a pass defense. And Jones with 3 tackles. Total yards was 323 for the Jags and 297 for the Browns. Passing yards, edge goes to Jacksonville, 196 to 127. Rushing also goes in Jacksonville's favor, but not by much, 127 to 125. Jacksonville had 18 first downs versus Cleveland's 17. Third downs, 2 of 14 for the Browns and 3 of 9 for Jacksonville. Fourth downs, the Browns were a perfect 3 for 3. Cleveland had 13 penalties for 100 yards. They now have 24 penalties through 2 games. They were sacked twice, losing 14 yards with 5 punts. And for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 6 penalties for 52 yards. Trevor Lawrence was sacked 4 times, losing 24 yards and 3 punts. Closing line was Jacksonville -3 and the over-under is 41. I took Jacksonville to win and to cover, lost that pick. So this is one of those upsets. Here's another of those upsets. The Green Bay Packers, with Malik Willis starting in place of the injured Jordan Love, they beat the hapless Indianapolis Colts 16-10. So the Packers get their first win of the year while Indianapolis drops to 0-2. Alright, individual numbers for the Packers. Malik Willis, 12 of 14, 122, 1 touchdown, and a QB rating of 126.8. The ground game was popping for Green Bay, and it was led by Josh Jacobs. 32 rushes for 151. And Malik Willis ran 6 times for 41 yards. Leading the Packer receivers is Romeo Doubs, 3 for 62 on 3 targets. Dontavian Wicks, 3 grabs for 26 and a touchdown on 4 targets. And that's pretty much it. Narvison, 3 for 4 on field goals. Longest was 46. 1 for 1 on extra points. And Whelan, 3 punts averaging 46.3. Long punt was 59. All 3 ended up inside the 20. Quay Walker led the Green Bay defense with 6 tackles. Bullard had 3 tackles and a pass defense. Likewise for Isaiah McDuffie and Xavier McKinney. Keyshawn Nixon, 3 tackles. Devontae Wyatt had a sack with his 2 tackles. And Jair Alexander had a couple tackles and a pass defense for the Packers. And for the Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson looked really bad on Sunday. 17 of 34 for 204 yards, 1 touchdown and 3 picks, and a QB rating of 41.8, plus 4 runs for 37. Jonathan Taylor was able to hit 100 yards rushing in this game, 12 for 103. Alec Pierce led Indy's receiving corps with 5 catches for 56 and a touchdown on 7 targets. Jonathan Taylor added 2 more grabs for 32 on 4 targets. And Michael Pittman had 3 catches for 21 on 7 targets. Matt Gay, 1 for 2 on field goals. Long was 34, 1 for 1 on extra points. Rigoberto Sanchez, 3 punts at 53.7 per punt. Longest was 59, 1 touchback and 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. Nick Cross led the Indianapolis defense with 10 tackles. Then you got E.J. Speed with 8 tackles. Zaire Franklin, 5 tackles and a forced fumble. Kwity Paye with 5 tackles. Then there's Rodney Thomas II with 4 tackles. Oda Yingbo also had 4 tackles. Lewis, Stewart, and Carles each had 3 tackles for the Colts. Total yards, 383 for the Packers and 338 for the Colts. Passing yards were 198 to 122 for Indianapolis. Rushing was 261 to 140 for Green Bay. Both teams finished with 19 first downs. Colts were terrible at 2 of 9 on 3rd down and 1 of 2 on 4th down, while the Packers slayed on 3rd down. They were 10 of 17. Indy had 3 penalties for 20 yards. Anthony Richardson was sacked once for 6, with 3 interceptions and 3 punts. And the Packers had 6 penalties for 50 yards, 1 lost fumble, and 3 punts as well. Closing line was Indianapolis -2, and the over-under was 41.5. I picked the Colts both straight up and against the spread and lost both picks. So a rough start for my picks out of the gate as we continue on to the Baltimore Ravens and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I saw an interesting stat this week about the Baltimore Ravens. Going back to the start of 2020, I think they said to the start of the 2000 season, the Ravens have lost 10 games where they had a lead of 7 points or more in the 4th quarter. Well, they added another one as they were up 10 in the 4th quarter, but the Raiders came back and won 26-23. Individual numbers for the Raiders: Gardner Minshew, very effective, 30 of 38, 276, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, QB rating of 94.7. Zaire White led the Raiders' ground attack, which was very non-existent, 9 rushes for 24 yards. Devontae Adams, 9 catches, 110, and a touchdown on 12 targets. Brock Bowers, 9 for 98 and 9 targets for the rookie. Jacoby Myers, 4 for 29 on 5 targets. Zaire White, 3 for 14 on 4 targets. Daniel Carlson, a perfect 4 for 4 on field goals. Long field goal was 53. And 2 for 2 on extra points. And then AJ Cole had 3 punts, averaging 42.7. 54 was his long punt. Robert Spillane led the Raiders defense with 8 tackles, 2 passes defensed, and an interception. Max Crosby, 5 tackles, 2 sacks, and a pass defense. Divine Diablo had 5 tackles as well. Trevon Morig, 4 tackles. And Christian Wilkins also had 4 tackles. And Marcus Epps finished with 3 tackles for the Raiders. For the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson was 21 of 34 for 247 with a touchdown and an interception and a QB rating of 81.4 plus 5 rushes for 45. King Derrick Henry, 18 rushes, 84 yards, and his first rushing touchdown as a Raven. And we'll add Justice Hill into this to 4 rushes for 22. Baltimore's top receiver was Zay Flowers with 7 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown on 11 targets. Mark Andrews, 4 for 51 on 5 targets. Rashad Bateman, 3 for 40 on 4 targets. And Isaiah Likely, 2 catches for 26 on 3 targets. Justin Tucker was 3 for 4 on field goals. Long was 48 and 2 for 2 on extra points. And Jordan Stout had 4 punts, averaging 43.3. Long punt was 57. And on defense, Marlon Humphrey paced the Ravens with 8 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Kyle Hamilton, 5 tackles. Roquan Smith, 4 tackles, and a pass defense. Adafi Owe had a pretty big game for the Ravens. 4 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. Kyle Van Noy, who had an eye injury in week 1, returned this week, had 3 tackles and 2 sacks. Simpson, Matabuke, and Williams each had 3 tackles for Baltimore. Total yards, 383 for the Ravens, 260 for the Raiders. Passing yards, 233 to 232 for Las Vegas. Rushing was a big advantage to Baltimore, 151 to 27. First downs also favored the Ravens at 21 to 18. On third down, neither team was good. The Raiders 4 of 12, the Ravens 3 of 11. Vegas on fourth down 0 for 1, Baltimore 1 for 1. Silver and Black had 3 penalties for 15 yards. Gardner Minshew was sacked 5 times for 43 yards with 1 interception and 3 punts. The Baltimore Ravens had 11 penalties for 109 yards. Lamar was sacked twice for 15 with 1 interception and 4 punts. Oops, I did that wrong. Let me get back in here. There we go. Closing line was Baltimore -9. Over under was 42.5. I lost the straight up pick, but I did take Vegas +9, so I'm happy about that. Alright, continuing on, the Los Angeles Chargers hammered the Carolina Panthers 26-3. And news came down that last year's #1 overall pick, Bryce Young, is being benched, and Andy Dalton will be the starter going forward. So the Chargers are now 2-0 under Jim Harbaugh, while the Panthers are 0-2. Individual numbers for the Chargers: Justin Herbert, 14 of 20 for 130 with 2 touchdowns and an interception. QB rating an even 100. Plus 6 runs for 18 yards. J.K. Dobbins, monster game, 17 for 131 and a touchdown. Gus Edwards, 18 for 59. Hassan Haskins, the former Michigan Wolverine, 3 rushes for 11. Leading receiver was Quentin Johnson. 5 catches, 51 yards, and 2 scores on 6 targets. Will Dissly, 3 for 29 on 3 targets. Ladd McConkey had 2 catches for 26 on 4 targets. And Joshua Palmer finishes with 2 grabs for 19 on 2 targets. Cameron Dicker, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long attempt was 46. Long make, I should say, was 46. And 2 for 3 on extra points. And J.K. Scott with 3 punts, averaging 43. Long was 47. 1 touchback and 2 punts inside the 20. Leading the way for the Chargers defense was Deion Henley with 6 tackles. Denzel Perryman, 5 tackles and a sack. Elijah Molden, 4 tackles, pass defense, and an interception. Derwin James had 4 tackles as well. And Jasir Taylor closes with 3 tackles. And for the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young finished 18 of 26 for only 84 yards with no touchdowns and an interception. His quarterback rating is 57.2. And then after the game, he would be benched in favor of Andy Dalton. Young ran once for 6 yards. Chuba Hubbard led the Carolina ground attack, 10 rushes for 64. Miles Sanders, 7 for 20. Next, you've got Tommy Tremble leading the Panthers receivers, 3 for 23 on 4 targets. Adam Thielen, 2 for 20 on 3 targets. Deontay Johnson, 3 for 15 on 6 targets. Chuba Hubbard, 4 for 12 yards on 5 targets. Eddie Pinheiro, 1 for 1 on field goals, only make from 38 and no extra points. Johnny Hecker, who was listed on the Carolina injury report, did play and had 7 punts for 44.4 yards on average. 64 was the longest punt, and 2 inside the 20-yard line. Shaq Thompson and Josie Jewell led the Carolina defense with 8 tackles each. Robinson has 6 tackles. J.C. Horn, 4 tackles, 2 passes defensed, and an interception. And Fuller with 4 tackles, and Jadeveon Clowney with 3. Total yards, 349 for the Chargers, just 159 for the Panthers. Passing yards were 130 to 69 LA. rush yards were 219 to 90, also for LA, and they had triple the third downs of the Panthers, 21 to 7. The Chargers finished 9 of 16 on third down. Carolina 1 for 12 on third down and 1 for 3 on fourth. The Panthers are 2 for 22 on third down in 2 games this year. That's the worst in the NFL. That's about 9%. 3 penalties, 15 yards for the Chargers. Only 1 sack for no yards lost. 1 fumble lost, an interception, and 3 punts. And for the Carolina Panthers, 9 flags for 90 yards, 2 sacks for 15, 1 interception, and 7 punts. Closing line was LA -4, and the over-under was 38.5. I picked the Chargers to win both straight up and against the spread, and I won both picks. Well, here's a blowout you didn't see coming. The New Orleans Saints go into AT&T Stadium and demolish the Dallas Cowboys to the tune of 44 to 19. New Orleans goes to a surprising 2-0, while the Dallas Cowboys suffers loss number 1. Alright, so the 91 points scored by New Orleans in the first 2 games are tied for the 4th most in NFL history. And their 138 points they've scored, dating back to week 18 of last year, also ranks pretty high. I think it's 2nd all time in the NFL over a 3-game span. Individual numbers for the Saints: Derek Carr, 11 of 16, didn't have to throw the ball much, but he had 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, QB rating solid of 125, and 1 rush for a yard and a touchdown. Alvin Kamara continues to tear it up, 20 rushes for 115 and 3 touchdowns, and had 2 catches and 65 yards on 3 targets and a receiving touchdown on top of that. So this was 180 yards and 4 touchdowns on 22 touches for Alvin Kamara. What a game. He's my offensive player of the week. Jamal Williams, 8 for 39 yards rushing. Rashid Shaheed, 4 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. And Chris Olave, 4 grabs for 81 on 6 targets. Next up, Blake Grupe. He went 1 for 1 on field goals, making from 26, and 5 of 6 on extra points. And then their punter, Matthew Hayball, only had 1 punt on the day for 49, which ended up inside the 20. Leading the New Orleans defense is Alontae Taylor with 8 tackles. Pete Werner had 5 tackles. Paulson Adebo, 4 tackles, 2 passes defensed, and an interception. Kool-Aid McKinstry, the rookie, had 3 tackles and a pass defense, likewise with Harris, Amadi, and Tyrann Mathieu. Mathieu had 2 passes defense. Amadi and Harris each had 1. And I skipped over a name here. Demario Davis had 3 tackles and a pass defense. Chase Young. Yep, that's Chase Young. 2 tackles. If I get back to it, here it goes. 2 tackles and half a sack. Carl Granderson had 1 tackle and 1.5 sacks. And Brian Breesy had 2 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble for the Saints. The Cowboys' loss snapped their 16-game home win streak in the regular season, and man, it was a thud for them. Dak Prescott, the $240 million man, struggled. 27 of 39 for 293, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, and a QB rating of 78.3. He would be replaced by Cooper Rush, who was 1 for 3 for 6 yards and a 42.4 passer rating. Rico Dowdle led the Dallas rushing game with 7 rushes for 30 yards. Ezekiel Elliott just 6 for 16. So really, the ground game was held in check by the Saints. CeeDee Lamb led the Cowboys receivers with 4 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets. Jalen Tolbert had 6 catches for 82 on 9 targets. Another former Michigan Wolverine, Luke Schoonmaker, had 6 catches for 43 yards on 6 targets. Rico Dowdle added 4 grabs for 29 on 5 targets. Ezekiel Elliott had 2 for 16 on 3 targets. And former Saint Brandon Cooks had 2 catches for 19 yards on 2 targets for Dallas. Brandon Aubrey 4 for 4 on field goals. Longest was 52, 1 for 1 on extra points. And Brian Anger had 1 punt for 53 yards, landing inside the 20-yard line. Leading the Cowboys defense was Damone Clark with 5 tackles. Trayvon Diggs had 4 tackles. DeMarvion Overshown had 4 tackles. As is Colleen Carson. Chauncey Golston had a sack with his 2 tackles. And Donovan Wilson had 2 tackles, a pass defense, and an INT. Alright, total yards. New Orleans 432, Dallas 353. Passing yards favored the Cowboys 285 to 242. Rushing favored the Saints 190 to 68. First downs 24-20 for New Orleans, who were 5 of 8 on 3rd down, which is really good. Cowboys 6 of 13 on 3rd, 1 for 3 on 4th. The Saints have 5 penalties for 40 yards, 1 sack for a loss of a yard, 1 interception, and 1 punt. And for the Cowboys, 4 penalties for 26, 3 sacks loss or losing 14, 3 sacks losing 14, 2 interceptions thrown, and 1 punt as well. So not a lot of punting in this game. Closing line was Dallas minus 6.5, and the over-under was 47. I lost both the straight up and ATS pick in this one as well. And for the second time in as many weeks to start the season, we had a game where the winner won without scoring a touchdown, and that's the Washington Commanders beating the New York Giants 21-18. We'll start with individual numbers for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels in his second start in the NFL, 23 for 29 for 226, no touchdowns or interceptions, and a 99.1 passer rating, plus 10 rushes for 44 yards. Brian Robinson Jr., 17 rushes, 133. And Austin Eckler, 8 for 38 yards. Zach Ertz led the Washington receiving corps with 4 catches for 62 yards on 4 targets. Next is Noah Brown, 3 for 56 on 3 targets. Austin Eckler, 3 for 47 on 3 targets. Terry McLaurin, 6 catches for only 22 yards on 8 targets. Austin Seibert, kicker out of Oklahoma in his 4th year in the NFL, went 7 for 7 on field goals. His longest one was 45 yards and no extra points. So last week it was the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Atlanta Falcons without the benefit of a touchdown. This week it's the Washington Commanders beating the New York Giants. And again, there were no punts by the Commanders in this game. Frankie Levu and Benjamin St. Juste, sorry about that, led the Commanders' defense with 6 tackles apiece. St. Juste added a forced fumble and 3 passes defense. The ageless Bobby Wagner had 5 tackles and a pass defense. Abignogini, I think that's how you pronounce his name, he had 3 tackles. Butler also had 3 tackles. Farrell had 2 tackles and a sack. And for the New York Football Giants, Daniel Jones, 16 of 28, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 100 passer rating. Plus 5 rushes for 32. Devin Singletary, 16 rushes, 95 yards, and a touchdown. Malik Neighbors had himself a solid game. 10 catches, 127 on 18 targets, and a touchdown. Darius Slayton, 3 for 33 on 4 targets. Sorry. And Wan'Dale Robinson, 2 for 18 and a touchdown on 4 targets. Jamie Gillen, no field goals attempted, but he was 0 for 1 on extra points. Of course, he filled in because their normal kicker, Graham Gano, got hurt. And Gillen, again, he had 2 punts averaging 43.5. 60 was the longest punt with 1 inside the 20. Okay, Jason Pinnock led the Giants defense with 8 tackles and 2 sacks. Then you have Micah McFadden, 7 tackles and a sack. Andrew Phillips, same deal, 7 tackles and a sack. Bobby Okereke, 4 tackles and a sack. Cordell Flott, 4 tackles. And Deontay Banks, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Tyler Nubin and Kayvon Thibodeau had 3 tackles apiece for New York. Total yards 425 for the Commanders, Giants with 304. Passing yards 210 for Washington, 175 for New York. And rushing yards were 215 to 129 for Washington. The Commanders had 22 first downs versus 18 for the Giants. New York 4 of 8 on 3rd down, 1 for 2 on 4th down. And the Commanders 7 for 14 on 3rd down, 1 for 1 on 4th down. The New York Giants finished with 5 penalties for 20 yards. Daniel Jones was sacked only once for 3 yards. with 1 lost fumble and 2 punts. And for the Washington Commanders, 10 penalties for 69. Jaden Daniels was sacked 5 times, matching the jersey number he wears, and he loses 16, with no fumbles, interceptions, or punts. Closing line was Washington -1, over-under was 43, nearly got to the total. And I picked the Commanders both straight up and against the spread, so I won both of those picks. Now let's talk about New York's other team, the Jets, who were dominated last Monday night by the 49ers, but finally gets in the win column by beating the number 1 defense yards-wise in the NFL in the Tennessee Titans 24-17. So that's win number 1 for the Jets in 2024. And Aaron Rodgers' first official W as the Jets quarterback. Tennessee drops to 0-2 on the year. So you have 3 teams in the AFC South still winless, and Tennessee's one of them. Individual numbers for the Jets: the aforementioned Aaron Rodgers, 18 of 30 for 176 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a QB rating of 98.8. Breece Hall, 14 rushes, 62 yards, led the New York ground attack. And then you have the rookie from Wisconsin, Braylon Allen, 7 rushes, 33 yards in his first NFL touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 4 catches, 57 yards on 6 targets, led the Jets receiving corps. Breece Hall, with 62 yards rushing, added 52 yards receiving on 7 catches and 8 targets, plus a touchdown. And Braylon Allen had 2 catches for 23 and a touchdown on 4 targets. So that's his first receiving score in the league. Greg Zuerlein, 1 for 1 on field goals. Only attempt was from 33, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Veteran punter Thomas Morstead, playing in his 16th year in the NFL. 6 punts, averaging 50.3. Long punt was 57 with 2 inside the 20. Alright. Jamian Sherwood led the Jets defense with 8 tackles and a pass defense. Quincy Williams also had 8 tackles. Brandon Echols finished with 4 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Chuck Clark had 4 tackles. How about the day for Will McDonald? He had 4 tackles, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble. Pretty good game. Quentin Williams had 3 tackles. Michael Carter II also had 3 tackles, as did Javon Kinlaw. And Tony Adams had 2 tackles and a pair of pass defenses for the New York Jets. And for the Tennessee Titans, Will Levis was 19 of 28, 192 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and an 84.2 quarterback rating, plus 4 rushes for 38. Tony Pollard led the ground attack for the Titans, 17 for 62. Tajay Spears, 6 for 20. How about Calvin Ridley? In addition to leading Tennessee with 4 catches, 77 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 6 targets, he also had the 1 10-yard run that went for a touchdown as well. Tony Pollard added 5 catches for 40 yards on 6 targets, along with his rushing stats. Tyler Boyd, 2 for 26 on 5 targets. Chig Okonkwo, love that name. 3 catches, 16 yards on 3 targets. Nick Folk, another veteran punter. He's in his 17th year. 1 for 1 on field goals. His longest 41. 2 for 2 on extra points. And Ryan Stonehouse, 4 punts averaging 56.5. Long punt was 63. No touchbacks. 1 punt inside the 20-yard line, and he had a block. Okay, leading the Titans defense was Ernest Jones IV. The former LA Ram had 6 tackles. Okay, Kenneth Murray with 5 tackles. Quandre Diggs had 4 tackles. Then you've got Jeffrey Simmons with 3 tackles. Arden Key with 3 tackles. Amani Hooker also with 3 tackles. And Roger McCrary had 3 tackles as well. Harold Landry, though, had 2 tackles and 2 passes defensed. And he added 2 sacks. L'Jarius Sneed was held to 2 tackles. And Chidobe Awuzie had 2 tackles for Tennessee. Total yards, 300 on the button for the Tennessee Titans. 265 for the New York Jets. Passing and rushing both favored the Titans. 170 yards through the air for the Titans versus 164 for the Jets. And 130 on the ground for the Titans versus 101 for the Jets. Tennessee had 20 first downs while the Jets had 16. Both teams finished 5 for 12 on 3rd down. The Titans were 0 for 1 on 4th. New York, 7 penalties, 70 yards. Aaron Rodgers was sacked twice, losing 12 with 6 punts. And for Tennessee, 5 penalties, 45 yards. Will Levis hit the deck 4 times, losing 22 yards. 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 5 punts. Closing line was the Jets -4, and the over-under was 41. So they hit the total right on the button. And I picked the Jets to win straight up, but I took Tennessee with the points. So I won the straight up pick and lost the ATS. So I am 4-4 both ways, halfway through. If you're joining late, this is the week that was, as we're taking a look at the individual stats from week 2 in the NFL. And stick around for my week 3 power rankings coming up at the end of the recap. Alright, moving on to the San Francisco 49ers at the Minnesota Vikings. The Niners wanted some measure of revenge after losing to the Vikings at US Bank Stadium last season on Monday Night Football. Unfortunately, they would not get said revenge as the Vikings beat the Niners again, 23-17. And how about the surprising Minnesota Vikings off to a 2-0 start while the 49ers are 1-1? Individual numbers for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll start with Sam Darnold, 17 of 26, 268, 2 touchdowns and an interception, and a 109.1 QB rating, plus 5 rushes for 32 yards. Alright, then you've got Ty Chandler, Minnesota's kick returner. He led the team in rushing, 10 rushes, 82 yards. Aaron Jones finishes 9 rushes, 32 yards, and 5 catches on 6 targets for 36. And then Justin Jefferson, 4 receptions, 133 yards on 7 targets, and a touchdown that went 97 yards, second longest in Vikings history. Then you've got the young Jalen Naylor with 3 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets. And I mentioned Aaron Jones already. Will Rickard 3 for 3 on field goals. Long field goal with 39. 2 for 2 on extra points. And Ryan Wright finished with 3 punts at 50.3 per punt. 56 was the longest. 1 touchback and 1 inside the 20. Leading the Vikings defense was Ivan Pace Jr. with 6 tackles. How about Blake Cashman in his second game as a Viking? 5 tackles, a sack, and 3 passes defensed. Joshua Metellus, 5 tackles, a pass defense, and an INT. Stephon Gilmore also had 5 tackles. Andrew Van Ginkel, 4 tackles, a sack, and a pass defensed. Cameron Bynum, 3 tackles. Harrison Smith, otherwise known as the Assassin, 3 tackles and a pass defense. And Byron Murphy also with 3 tackles. And Pat Jones had himself a pretty good game. 2 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. And Jonathan Grenard added 2 tackles and a sack for the Vikings. As for the 49ers, Brock Purdy was 28 of 36 for 319 with 1 touchdown and 1 interception, QB rating of 101.3. Plus 2 rushes for 12 yards. Jordan Mason, who will be filling in for the injured Christian McCaffrey for at least the next month, had 20 rushes for 100 yards and a rushing touchdown. And 1 catch for 4 yards on 1 target. Deebo Samuel, 8 catches, 110 yards on 10 targets. But he injured his calf in this game and will be out for a few weeks. So yeah, this Niners offense is already without Christian McCaffrey. Now they're going to be without Deebo Samuel. That's not good. George Kittle, 7 for 76 and a touchdown on 8 targets. Brandon Ayuk, 4 for 43 on 5 targets. And Jawan Jennings, 2 for 37 on 4 targets. Jake Moody, 1 for 1 on field goals, making from 31, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Mitch Wisnowski, 2 punts, averaging 49.5. Long punt was 58. Both punts ended up inside the 20-yard line, and unfortunately, he had a black as well. Fred Warner was a man-beast in this game for the 49ers. He had 7 tackles, 1 sack, 2 forced fumbles, 2 passes defensed, and an interception, leading San Francisco's D. Nick Bosa and Jair Brown had 4 tackles apiece. Isaac Yiadom had 3 tackles. And that's basically it, outside of Kevin Givens, who had a tackle and a sack. Total yards, 403 for Minnesota, 399 for San Francisco. So the offense nearly evenly distributed by both teams. San Francisco had the edge in passing yards, 297 to 257. Minnesota had the advantage on the ground, 146 to 102. The Niners had 24 first downs versus 17 for the Vikings. Big reason why San Francisco lost, they were just 2 of 10 on third down. Ouch. And 1 for 3 on fourth down. While the Vikings were a solid 7 for 12 on third down. 49ers had 4 penalties for 30 yards. Brock Purdy was sacked 6 times, losing 32 yards. 1 fumble, 1 interception, and 3 punts. And the Vikings had 7 penalties for 53. 4 sacks on the day. 4 sacks on the day by the Niners defense on Sam Darnold for 11 yards. 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 3 punts as well. Closing line was San Francisco -4, and the over-under is 46.5. I took the Niners straight up, but I took Minnesota with the points. So I lost the straight up pick, but took the ATS. Next, you've got the Seattle Seahawks going into Foxborough and beating the New England Patriots in overtime, 23-20. Pushing Seattle to 2-0 and the top of the NFC West. While the Patriots, fresh off of their upset win of the Bengals last week, fell back to 500. Starting with the Seahawks individual stats, Geno Smith, 33 of 44 for 327 with a touchdown and an interception and a 103.1 passer rating plus 5 rushes for 8 yards. And then you got Zach Charbonnet, 14 for 38 and a touchdown on the ground, 5 for 31 and 5 targets receiving. Speaking of receiving, you had a pair of 200-yard or 100-yard receivers, led by DK Metcalf, 10 for 129 and a touchdown on 14 targets, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, 12 for 117 on 16 targets. Wow, Tyler Lockett was pretty much a non-factor, held to 2 catches, 15 yards, and 2 targets. Jason Myers was 3 for 3 on field goals. Long field goal made was 44, and 2 for 2 on extra points. And then 7-year veteran punter Michael Dixon had 5 punts averaging 53.8 yards per. Long was 61 with a touchback and a punt inside the 20. Julian Love led Seattle's defense with 7 tackles and a pass defense. Then you've got Rayshon Jenkins with 4 tackles. Tyrell Dodson with 4 tackles and a forced fumble. Devin Witherspoon, 4 tackles. Boye Mafe with 4 tackles and a sack. Tyrese Knight, 3 tackles. Jaron Reed, 3 tackles. Kevon Wallace with 3 tackles. Reek Woolen, 3 tackles. Jonathan Hankins also with 3 tackles. Jerome Baker with 2 tackles and a pass defense. He did injure his hamstring in this game. And Leonard Williams, 1 tackle and 1.5 sacks for the Seahawks. As for New England, Jacoby Brissett, 15 of 27, 149 yards, a touchdown and no interceptions, 83.7 QB rating, plus 2 rushes for 6 yards. Antonio Gibson led the ground attack for New England, 11 rushes, 96 yards, Ramondre Stevenson, 21 for 81 and another touchdown. Hunter Henry paced the Patriots receivers, 8 catches for 109 on 12 targets. And how about Jalen Polk? 2 catches, 12 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. Ramondre Stevenson added 2 catches for 9 on 5 targets. Not much to talk about with KJ Osborne, Antonio Gibson, or Austin Hooper, or even Demario Douglas. Joey Sly, 2 for 3 on field goals. His long was 29, 2 for 2. And Bryce Behringer, young punter, second-year man out of Michigan State. 6 punts, averaging 57. Long was 67. 1 touchback, and 3 inside the 20-yard line. Leading the way for the Patriots defense was Kyle Duggar, 8 tackles and a sack. Then you've got Jonathan Jones with 6 tackles. Christian Gonzalez, 5 tackles and a pass defense. Marcus Jones, same numbers, 5 tackles and a pass defense. Anthony Jennings had 3 tackles, as did Raekwon McMillan. Jabril Peppers and Jelani Tavai. Keon White had 2 tackles and 1.5 sacks. And Daniel Ekuel, I hope I got his name right. He had a couple tackles as well for the Patriots. Alright, total yards 358 for Seattle and 310 for New England. Passing yards were 312 to 125 for Seattle. Rushing yards were 185 to 46 for New England. The Patriots had 19 first downs versus 18 for the Seahawks. Seattle 7 of 15 on 3rd down, 1 for 2 on 4th down, and New England 6 of 16 on 3rd down. 6 penalties, 50 yards for the Seahawks, 3 sacks for a loss of 15, and 5 punts. And 3 penalties, 42 yards for the Patriots, 3 sacks taken for 24, and 6 punts. Closing line was Seattle -3, and the over-under is 39. I took Seattle straight up, but took the Patriots with the points. So I won the straight up, lost the ATS. The last of the Sunday afternoon games was a rematch of last year's NFC Divisional Playoff, as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers exact revenge and beat the Detroit Lions 20-16. And they joined the Saints atop the NFC South at 2-0, while the Lions fall to 500. Individual numbers first for the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield, or as Mitch from the Bottom Line View would call him, Baker the commercial maker. 12 of 19, 185 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a 90.9 passer rating. And he also led the team in rushing, 5 rushes, 34, and a rushing touchdown. Alright, then you've got the rookie from Oregon, Bucky Irving, 7 for 22 on the ground. And Rachaad White, 10 for 18. Chris Godwin led the Bucs receivers, 7 for $117 and a touchdown on 8 targets. Mike Evans, 3 for 42 on 6 targets. Chase McLaughlin, 2 for 2 on field goals. Longest make was 55 and 2 for 2 on extra points. And then Jake Camarda, five punts at 46 per punt. Long was 51. 2 punts inside the 20. Leading the Bucs defense was Jordan Whitehead. 8 tackles and a pass defense. Jamil Dean, 7 tackles and a pass defense. Servalka Dennis had 6 tackles. Tyke Smith also had 6 tackles. Meanwhile, Zion McCollum had 6 tackles as well, plus 4 passes defense and an interception. Christian Eisen finished with 5 tackles, 2 passes defense, and an interception. And Levante David closes with 5 tackles for Tampa Bay. As for the Lions, Jared Goff, 34 of 55 for 307 yards with no touchdowns and 2 INTs. Yow. That's a QB rating of 61.7. Their punter, Jack Fox, completed a pass attempt for 17 yards and had a 118.8 passer rating. Alright, leading the ground attack was Jahmyr Gibbs, 13 for 84. David Montgomery, 11 for 35 and a touchdown. Alright. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was pretty much missing in action against the Rams in week 1. Not so much this week. 11 catches for 119 on 19 targets. Jameson Williams, 5 for 79 on 11 targets. David Montgomery, 4 catches, 35 on 4 targets, plus his rushing stats. Khalif Raymond, 3 for 27 on 4 targets. Jahmyr Gibbs, 7 for 22 on 7 targets, added on to his rushing numbers as well. Young Jake Bates, 3 for 3 on field goals, long make from 35, and 1 for 1 on extra points. And the aforementioned Jack Fox, who completed a pass in this game, he had 2 punts averaging 33.5. Long one was 35, with both punts ending up inside the 20-yard line. Brian Branch led the Detroit defense with 5 tackles, 2 passes defense, and an interception. Then you've got Jack Campbell with 4 tackles. Derek Barnes with 4 tackles and a pass defense. How about Aiden Hutchinson? Listen to this stat line. 4 tackles, 4.5 sacks, which is 1 off of the single-game Lions franchise record, and 1 forced fumble. He's my defensive player of the week. Carlton Davis with 4 tackles. Alex Anzalone had, punch this back up, here we go, 3 tackles. And Kirby Joseph also with 3 tackles for the Lions. Total yards, 463 for Detroit, 216 for Tampa. Passing yards, more than a 2-to-1 clip to the Lions, 324 to 146. Rushing is nearly a 2-to-1 edge to the Lions at 139 to 70. Same with first downs. Detroit had 26, Tampa had 14. Alright, so the Bucs were not good on third down. They were 2 of 10. The Lions 7 of 17 on third down and 3 of 5 on fourth down. Tampa Bay 4 penalties, 35 yards. Baker Mayfield sacked 5 times, losing 39 yards, 1 interception thrown in 5 punts. And for the Lions, 4 penalties for 71 yards. No sacks taken. No fumbles lost. 2 interceptions and 2 punts. Closing line was Detroit minus 7.5. Over under is 52. I picked the Lions both straight up and against the spread and lost both picks. On to the late afternoon portion of the schedule, and we're going to start off with the Arizona Cardinals with a big offensive and defensive showing, annihilating the LA Rams 41-10 for their first one of 2024, while LA has sunk to the bottom of the NFC West at 0-2. Alright, individual numbers for the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, have yourself a day. 17 of 21, 266, 3 touchdowns, no INTs through the air, and a perfect 158.3 QB rating. On the ground, he had 5 rushes for 59 yards. So that's pretty much a 300-yard game for Kyler. James Conner, 21 rushes, 122 yards, and a touchdown led Arizona's ground attack. And then you got the rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. pacing the Cardinals receivers. 4 catches for 130 and 2 touchdowns, one of them going for 60 on 8 targets. Trey McBride, 6 for 67 on 6 targets. Michael Wilson, 2 for 31 on 2 targets. And Elijah Higgins, 1 catch, 18 yards, and a touchdown on his only target. Hopefully. Okay. Matt Prater, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long attempt was 57. And 5 for 5 on extra points. And Blake Gilligan had just 1 punt for 60 yards. Buda Baker led Arizona's defense with 8 tackles and a pass defense. Dennis Gardeck had himself a pretty good day. 6 tackles, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble. Then there's Jalen Thompson with 3 tackles. And Owen Papole with 3 tackles as well for the Arizona Cardinals. Ooh. Man, sorry about that, guys. Trying not to die on camera here. Moving on to the LA Rams individual numbers. Matthew Stafford, 19 of 27 for 216. No touchdowns or interceptions. Quarterback rating of 94.1. Blake Corum, the rookie from Michigan, led the LA ground attack. 8 rushes, 28 yards. Kyren Williams, 12 for 25 and a touchdown. And leading the Rams receivers is Demarcus Robinson. 2 for 50 yards on 4 targets. Tutu Atwell, 3 for 48 on 4 targets. Cooper Kupp, 4 for 37 on 6 targets. Kyren Williams, along with his rushing numbers, had 4 catches for 27 on 5 targets. I should be alright now. Joshua Carty, rookie kicker from Stanford, 1 for 1 on field goals, only make from 29, and 1 for 1 on extra points. And then you got Ethan Evans, 4 punts averaging 53.8. Long punt was 63. 2 punts inside the 20. Alright. Quentin Lake had 6 tackles. Rookie Jarrett Verse had 6 tackles plus a forced fumble, both pacing the LA defense. Cameron Crowe with 4 tackles. Troy Reader also with 4 tackles, likewise for Christian Roseboom. Tre'Davious White with 3 tackles, I should say. And Kobe Turner with 2 tackles and a sack. Okay, total yards 489 to 245, nearly 2-1 for the Cardinals. Passing yards for 258 to 192 for the Cardinals. Rush yards for 231 to 53 for the Cardinals. Arizona with 24 first downs, LA with 14. Rams 2 of 11 on 3rd down, 1 of 3 on 4th. And Arizona a very good 7 of 11 on 3rd. LA had 2 penalties for 10 yards. Stafford was sacked 5 times, losing 24, 1 lost fumble, and 4 punts. And 5 penalties, 52 yards for the Cardinals. 1 sack for Kyler Murray, losing 8, 1 lost fumble, and 1 punt. Closing line was a pick'em. Over-under was 47.5. Arizona came in as the favorite in this game. But I picked the Rams both ways and lost majorly on both picks. Alright, to the 5th all-time meeting between Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. And it's Mahomes and the Chiefs getting the last laugh with a 26-25 win over the Bengals. All thanks to a rather controversial pass interference call against Cincinnati towards the end of the game, which would lead to the game-winning field goal. So the Chiefs are off to a 2-0 start, while Cincinnati, much like Baltimore, is 0-2. Start with individual numbers for the victorious Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, 18 of 25, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and an 80.6 passer rating, plus 4 rushes for 29. Isaiah Pacheco, there's some news on him. Again, Isaiah Pacheco, there is some news. 19 rushes for 90 yards. But he did get hurt. He fractured his fibula and is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks. So that's not good for the Chiefs. Pacheco also had 5 catches on 5 targets for 21. Sorry again, guys. I don't know why I can't stop coughing. Okay. Carson Steele, who will probably be the starting running back in place of Pacheco, had 7 rushes for 24 yards. Shit, man. Sorry about that. Okay. Rashid Rice led the KC receivers with 5 catches for 75 and a touchdown on 6 targets. And Justin Watson had 2 for 22 yards on 2 targets. We've already talked about Isaiah Pacheco. Xavier Worthy, the speedy rookie out of Texas, had 2 catches for 17 yards on 4 targets. And Wanya Morris, he's an offensive lineman for the Chiefs. He had 1 catch for a yard on his only target, which went for a score. So yeah, you got offensive linemen scoring touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes. Harrison Butker, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 51, and 2 of 2 on extra points. And Matt Ariza, 2 punts averaging 56. Long was 63, both inside the 20. Nick Bolton had 5 tackles and a pass defense. Leo Chanel had 5 tackles and a forced fumble, both facing the Kansas City defense. Shamari Connor, 4 tackles and a sack. Both Brian Cook and Trent McDuffie had 4 tackles and a pass defense each. Drew Tranquil, 3 tackles. Justin Reed also with 3 tackles. And Jalen Watson with 3 tackles as well. Mike Dana had 2 tackles. George Karlaftis had 1 tackle. Both had half a sack for the Chiefs. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, who pretty much outplayed Mahomes in this game, 23 of 36, 258, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 103.7 QB rating, plus 6 runs for 9 yards. Zach Moss, 12 for 34, led the Bengals ground attack. And Chase Brown had 4 runs for 31. Leading receiver for Cincinnati is Mike Gesicki, 7 for 91 on 9 targets. Next is Jermaine Burton, 1 catch for 47 on 2 targets. Jamar Chase, 4 catches, 35 yards on 5 targets. He got a little bit heated in this game. Eric All Jr. This is the former Michigan tight end who then transferred to Iowa and was drafted out of Iowa. He had 4 catches for 32 yards on 4 targets. And how about Andre Yosivas? 2 catches, 4 targets for 7 yards, and both catches were touchdowns. That's pretty good. Evan McPherson, 4 for 4 on field goals. Long was 53. 1 for 2 on extra points. Ryan Redcow, 2 punts for an average of 49. Long was 53. Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson led the Cincinnati defense with 7 tackles apiece. Pratt also added a forced fumble. Then there is former Baltimore Raven Geno Stone, 4 tackles. Trey Hendrickson, 4 tackles and 2 sacks. Dax Hill with 4 tackles as well. And Sam Hubbard with 3 tackles. Total yards, 320 for the Bengals, and Chiefs 286. Passing yards, 246 to 137 for Cincinnati. Rush yards is 149 to 74 Kansas City. The Chiefs had 19 first downs, the Bengals 18. Cincinnati 4 of 13 on 3rd down. Kansas City an uncharacteristic 1 for 8 on 3rd down. Both were 2 for 2 on 4th. 8 penalties, 79 yards for the Bengals. Joe Shiesty was sacked 3 times for 12 yards, 1 lost fumble, and 2 punts. 4 penalties, 44 yards for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes was sacked twice for 14 yards. 1 lost fumble, 2 interceptions, and 2 punts as well. Closing line was Kansas City minus 6.5. Over-under was 47.5. Took the Chiefs straight up, but I took Cincinnati with the points. So technically, I won that one. It says here that I lost. I said Cincinnati plus 5.5. So we're going to change that. Okay, wrapping up the Sunday afternoon schedule is the Pittsburgh Steelers in a defensive game, defeating the Denver Broncos 13-6, and Pittsburgh's off to a 2-0 start while Denver remains winless. Individual numbers for the Steelers, starting off with Justin Fields playing in place of the injured Russell Wilson. 13 of 20 for 117, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 97.3 QB rating, plus 8 rushes for 27. Najee Harris, 17 carries, 69 yards. Jaylen Warren, 9 for 42. Pat Freiermuth led the Steelers receivers, 4 for 39 on 4 targets. George Pickens, 2 for 29 on 4 targets. Jaylen Warren, with his rush numbers, had 2 catches, 19 yards on 2 targets. Van Jefferson, 2 for 14 on 3 targets. And Darnell Washington, 1 catch on his only target for 5 yards, and he made good on that target because it went for a touchdown. Craig Boswell, 10th year kicker, is 2 for 2 on field goals, 53 his longest, and 1 for 1 on extra points. And Corliss Waitman, 2nd year punter out of South Alabama, had 8 punts. That's right, 8, averaging 53 yards. 58 was the longest punt, with 3 touchbacks and 2 punts inside the 20. Minkah Fitzpatrick led the Pittsburgh defense with 5 tackles. They got Deshaun Elliott with 4 tackles. Alex Highsmith, 4 tackles and a sack. Then you've got Patrick Queen, DeMonte Kazee, and TJ Watt. Or rather, Patrick Queen and DeMonte Kazee, they each had 3 tackles and a pass defense. Kazee added an interception. TJ Watt had 2 tackles plus a sack and a pass defense. And then Isaiah Loudermilk, lesser known defensive end for the Steelers, had 2 tackles and a pass defense. And Corey Trice Jr. had 2 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception for the Steelers. Okay. For the Broncos, Bo Nix was 20 of 35 for 246, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 55.2 QB rating. He also led the team in rushing with 4 rushes for 25 yards. And Javonte Williams held to 11 rushes for 17 yards. But he did add 5 catches for 48 yards on 5 targets. Josh Reynolds led Denver's receivers with 4 catches, 93 yards on 5 targets. Lil Jordan Humphrey, 4 catches, 50 yards on 5 targets. And Greg Dulcich, 3 for 16 on 8 targets. Longtime kicker Will Lutz. That's not Will Lutz. This is Will Lutz. He's in his 9th year. 2 for 2 on field goals, 35 is his long, and no extra points. And Riley Dixon with 6 punts, averaging 52.5. Long was 58. 3 punts inside the 20-yard line. Alex Singleton led the Broncos defense with 7 tackles. And then you had a host of players with 3 tackles, including Cody Barton, Brandon Jones, Nick Bonito, John Franklin Myers, DJ Jones, Jonah Ellis, who also added a sack, and Riley Moss. All those players had 3 tackles. Zach Allen had 2 tackles and a sack for the Broncos. Total yards, Broncos 295, Steelers 251. Denver held the edge through the air, 231 passing yards to 110, while the Steelers had the ground game advantage, 141 to 64. First downs were 16 to 13 for Pittsburgh. Both teams bat on third down, 4 of 13 for the Steelers, 2 of 12 for the Broncos. Denver also 1 for 2 on fourth down. And how about 10 penalties, 78 yards for the Steelers? Justin Fields was sacked twice for 7 yards and 8 punts. And 9 penalties for 124 for the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix was sacked twice for 15, 2 interceptions, and 6 punts. Closing line was Pittsburgh minus 2.5. Over under was 36.5. I took the Steelers both ways. Alright, on to Sunday Night Football, as the Houston Texans defeated the Chicago Bears in a surprisingly low-scoring game, 19-13. So the Texans are off to a 2-0 start, while the Bears, who had to come back and beat the Titans last week, takes their first L of 2024. Individual numbers for the Texans, we got defending Offensive Rookie of the Year, C.J. Stroud, 23 of 36, 260 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, QB rating of 94.7. Cam Akers led the ground attack for Houston. He had 7 rushes for 32 yards. Joe Mixon, meanwhile, was held to 9 for 25. Tank Dell was 3 for 16. Nico Collins had a good night in the receiving room for the Texans, 8 for 135 and a touchdown on 10 targets. Stephon Diggs pretty much silenced, 4 catches, 37 on 6 targets. Joe Mixon 3 for 25 on 5 targets. Dalton Schultz 2 for 21 on 3 targets. And Dare Ogunbowale, don't you just love how that comes off the tongue? 2 catches, 20 yards on 2 targets. Alright, Kaimi Fairbairn, 4 for 4 on field goals. Long was 59, 1 for 1 on extra points. I think it was 3 for 3 on field goals, 50 yards and beyond. I mean, he was kicking those long field goals and making them too. Tommy Townsend, 6 punts, averaging 44.5 yards. Long was 60, with 2 punts inside the 20. Henry Tool led the Texans defense with 9 tackles and a sack. Next, you've got Jalen Petrie with 8 tackles. Azeez Al-Shaair, 6 tackles and a sack. Jimmy Ward with 6 tackles as well. Danielle Hunter, 3 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Rookie safety Kalen Bullock from USC had 3 tackles. Rookie corner Kamari Lassiter from Georgia had 3 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Will Anderson Jr. finished with 2 tackles and 1.5 sacks. And Eric Murray with 2 tackles and a pass defense for the Texans. For the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams was 23 of 37 for 174, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, QB rating of 51. Whew. Excuse me. He also led the team in rushing with 5 attempts for 44. DeAndre Swift was limited to 14 rushes for 18 yards. DJ Moore led Chicago's receivers, 6 catches, 53 yards on 10 targets. Roma Dunze, 2 for 33 on 5 targets. Next is DeAndre Carter, 3 catches, 4 targets, 32 yards. Cole Kmet, 4 for 27 on 5 tackles, or rather 4 for 27 on 5 targets. Pretty similar numbers for DeAndre Swift, who was limited to 14 rushes, 18 yards, and 4 catches for 24 on 5 targets. Cairo Santos, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 54 and 1 for 1 on extra points. And then you have Torrey Taylor, 6 punts averaging 47.3. Long was 57, 2 punts inside the 20. Alright. Tremaine Edmonds led Chicago's defense with 8 tackles and a sack. Kevin Byard and TJ Edwards each had 7 tackles. Jaquan Brisker had 4 tackles. Kyler Gordon also with 4 tackles plus a pass defense. Same for Tyreek Stevenson. And then you have Andrew Billings with 2 tackles and a forced fumble. And Jack Sanborn with 1 tackle, 1 sack, and a pass defense for the Bears. Total yards, Houston 310, Chicago 205. Passing yards 235 for the Texans, 134 for the Bears. Rush yards, slight edge to Houston, 75 to 71. Both teams with 15 first downs. Bears 6 of 17 on 3rd down, 1 of 2 on 4th down. And the Texans 4 of 14 on 3rd down and 1 of 1 on 4th down. A lot of penalties in this game. 9 for 60 yards for Chicago. Caleb was sacked 7 times for 40 yards. No lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 6 punts. And in 12 flags for 115 for the Texans. CJ was sacked 3 times for 25, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 6 punts. Closing line was Houston -6, over under 45.5. I took the Texans straight up and against the spread. I won the straight up pick by end up pushing the ATS as Houston did win by 6 points. I'll take that. And then the last game of the week was Monday Night Football as the Atlanta Falcons led a last-second drive to defeat my Philadelphia Eagles in our home opener at the Link, 22-21, as both teams are now 1-1 on the season. We'll start with individual numbers for the Falcons. Kirk Cousins, 20 of 29, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 117.2 QB rating. Bijan Robinson, 14 rushes, 97 yards, 4 receptions, 25 yards on 5 targets. Tyler Algier, 9 for 53 on the ground, 1 catch for 12 yards on his only target. Ray McLeod, 1 run for 3 yards, plus 3 catches, 42 yards on 5 targets. Darnell Mooney led the Atlanta receiving corps, 3 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. Drake London, 6 for 54 and a touchdown on 7 targets as well. Kyle Pitts held to 3 for 20 yards on 4 targets. Younghoe Koo, 3 for 3 on field goals, Long was 39, 1 for 1 on extra points. And Bradley Pinion, 2 punts averaging 44.5 yards, Long was 45. Jesse Bates had 7 tackles, 2 passes defense, and an interception to pace the Falcon defense. A.J. Terrell Jr. also with 7 tackles. Caden Ellis with 6. Troy Anderson with 5. D. Alford, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Matthew Judon, 3 tackles and a sack. Justin Simmons, 3 tackles. And Mike Hughes with 3 tackles as well for the Falcons. As for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, 23 of 30 for 183 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 88.6 QB rating, plus 13 rushes, 85 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Saquon Barkley, 22 rushes, 95 yards on the ground, 4 for 21 on 5 targets through the air, so another 100-yard game for Saquon. Devontae Smith led the Philadelphia receivers, 7 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets. Dallas Goedert, 3 for 38 on 4 targets. Braden Covey, 6 for 23 on 6 targets. Even Grant Calcaterra getting involved a little bit, 2 for 19 on 2 targets. Jahan Dotson, his first catch as an Eagle for 6 yards on his only target. Jake Elliott, 2 for 2 on field goals, Long was 29, 1 for 1 on extra points. Braden Mann, 2 punts at 46.5 per punt, Long was 53, 1 punt inside the 20. Reed Blankenship led Philly's defense with 9 tackles. Zach Bond, 7 tackles. N'Kobe Dean, 5 tackles. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, 3 tackles. Darius Big Play Slay, 3 tackles. Thomas Booker IV with 3 tackles. Josh Sweat, 2 tackles. Quinion Mitchell, 2 tackles and a pass defense. Milton Williams, 2 tackles and a sack. I think they say he got hurt. Oh, he was limited in practice on Friday, but he did play. Had the only sack on the team. And nose tackle Jordan Davis finished with 1 tackle and a pass defense. Okay, total yards, 385 for the Falcons and 365 for the Eagles. Passing yards, 233 to 179 Atlanta. Rush yards, 186 to 152 Philadelphia. Both teams 22 first downs. Falcons just 2 of 9 on 3rd down, 1 of 2 on 4th down. And the Eagles 6 of 13 on 3rd down, 2 of 3 on 3rd down. The Falcons had 3 penalties for 40 yards. Kirk Cousins sacked only once for 8 yards. no fumbles lost or interceptions thrown, and 2 punts. 9 penalties, 53 yards for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts was sacked once for 4 yards, no fumbles lost, 1 interception, and 2 punts. Closing line is Philadelphia minus 5.5, over under 46.5. Nearly got to the total, but Atlanta wins and covers. So I lost the straight up pick and took the ATS. So overall, my straight up picks were not good. Finished 8-8. But I'll take a 9-6-1 ATS record. I can at least hang my hat on that one. Alright, as we're at the end of the rundown, let's take a look now at the week 3 power rankings, starting from bottom to the top. No change with the bottom 4, as the Carolina Panthers, New York Giants, Denver Broncos, and Washington Commanders all occupy the bottom 4 spots. The Carolina Panthers at 0-2 will host the Las Vegas Raiders. Or no, they visit the Las Vegas Raiders. That's my mistake. They're at number 32. The New York Giants stay at number 31. They are also 0-2. They're in Cleveland this week against the Browns. The Denver Broncos stay put at number 30 at 0-2. They're in Tampa this week against the Bucks. And the Washington Commanders remain at number 29 with a 1-1 record. They are in Cincinnati, one of 2 Monday night games coming up this week. The Indianapolis Colts fell 3 spots to number 28. They are 0-2. Their next game is at home against the Chicago Bears. And a fun fact / quick stat for you about the Indianapolis Colts. The 474 rush yards allowed by the Indianapolis Colts are the most by a team in the first 2 games of a season since the 0-2 Seattle Seahawks. I read that stat on Discord. The Tennessee Titans stay at number 27 with a 0-2 record. They will host the Green Bay Packers and their former quarterback, Malik Willis. The Chicago Bears fell 5 spots to number 26. I think getting your quarterback sacked 7 times deserves that type of drop. They are 1-1 and they will face the Indianapolis Colts up next. At number 25, you got the Las Vegas Raiders up 1 spot. They are 1-1 and they'll host the Carolina Panthers, who pretty much can't seem to do anything right except bench their quarterback for Andy Dalton. That's about it. The Arizona Cardinals up 4 spots to number 24. They are 1-1 after their belt-to-booty beatdown of the LA Rams. They will host the Detroit Lions, who have kind of been sleepwalking these first 2 weeks. We'll see if Detroit gets it back here against the Cardinals. Possible trap game for the Lions. Biggest drop goes to the Los Angeles Rams, falling 9 spots to number 23 with a 0-2 record, and they will host the San Francisco 49ers. So it's not getting easy for Sean McVay's squad. The Seattle Seahawks, despite beating the New England Patriots, stay at number 22 with a 2-0 record. They will host the Miami Dolphins. And the aforementioned New England Patriots, despite losing, moved up 3 spots to number 21. Because there are a few teams ahead of them that dropped below them. They played Thursday night in New York against the Jets. Then you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars at 0-2, down 4 spots to number 20. They will play the Buffalo Bills in the first of the 2 Monday night games. The Minnesota Vikings, who continues to surprise a lot of people, they are 2-0. They're up 4 spots to number 19. They will host the Houston Texans in Week 3. So this will be the return of Danielle Hunter to Minnesota after being dealt to the Texans. The Cleveland Browns are up 2 spots to number 18. They are 1-1, and they will host the New York Giants on Sunday. The Los Angeles Chargers also up 2 spots to number 17 with a 2-0 record. They're at Pittsburgh this week. Also moving up 2 spots, you've got the Atlanta Falcons at 1-1. They're hosting the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Down 3 to number 15 despite their first win of the year are the Green Bay Packers. They are at the Tennessee Titans, which means the return of Malik Willis to Nashville. Number 14, dropping 5 spots, are the Miami Dolphins at 1-1. They are in Seattle this week. Number 13, down 3 spots, are the Cincinnati Bengals, still 0-2. And they'll host the Washington Commanders in the second Monday night game of the week. Down 5 spots to number 12, the Dallas Cowboys at 1-1. They will host the Baltimore Ravens. And it's not going to be an easy game for them, I don't think. Up 2 spots to number 11, the New York Jets at 1-1. They'll host the New England Patriots on Thursday night. The winless Baltimore Ravens drop 2 spots and remain in the top 10. I don't know how that's possible, but here we are. They're in Dallas this week against the Cowboys. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, looks like they're going to... No, they're not going to make the biggest jump. They're up 6 spots, though, to number 9, which is pretty healthy. They're 2-0, and they host the Denver Broncos. The Philadelphia Eagles, after that terrible loss last night to the Falcons, fell to number 8, down 3 spots. They are 1-1, and it gets no easier as they visit the Saints this week. Number 7, up 4 spots, are the Pittsburgh Steelers at 2-0. They host Jim Harbaugh's LA Chargers at Acrisure. Biggest jump goes to the New Orleans Saints, up 11 spots to number 6, 2-0 record, and they will host the Philadelphia Eagles. They may possibly go 3-0. Slipping a spot to number 5, the Detroit Lions at 1-1. They are in Arizona taking on the Cardinals. Number 4 is the San Francisco 49ers, down 2 spots at 1-1. They face the Rams in LA. Definite get-right game for Kyle Shanahan. Up 3 spots to number 3 are the Buffalo Bills at 2-0. They will host the Jacksonville Jaguars on the first of 2 Monday night games. The Houston Texans move up 1 spot to number 2. They are at 2-0 as well. They visit the Minnesota Vikings this week. And staying at number 1, despite a big test from the Bengals, are the Kansas City Chiefs at 2-0. They are in Atlanta to face Kirk Cousins and the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. And that is your Week 2 edition of the week that was, plus your Week 3 power rankings. It was a pretty long one today, but that's okay. Join me tomorrow for the Week 4 college football schedule. And then on Thursday, we will have my Week 3 NFL picks, both straight up and against the spread. Plus, I'll look at the injury report heading into the Patriots-Jets game. And then we'll look at the other games on Friday. And then a last-minute look at the injuries on Sunday morning. I will be live at about 9:15 for that, so join me then. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.